I'm Ezra Deanna, and this is day 5 of week 4 of our daily dose of Torah by video format and emails. One of the biggest questions that comes up when it comes to tzedakah is the notion of ma'aser, or as many of us may be aware, that there is a custom to give, as we'll see, it may be more than just a custom, to give 1/10 of one's earnings. It's complicated exactly how that's calculated, and we may get to that over the next day or two. Towards tzedakah. Now, there is a mitzvah of tzedakah, of course, which we know we fulfill anytime we give money to some poor person. Where does the 10% rule fit into all of that? So first of all, Rabbi Melamed, in answering this question, notes that Shulchan Aruch notes that there are 3 different amounts of tzedakah that people give. The ideal amount, if one is able, is 20% of what someone earns, or 1/5 of what they earn, known as a chamishit or a chomesh. A second, or the middle level, which is what most people fulfill, or should be fulfilling, is a notion of ma'aser, giving 1/10 of what people make. And finally, says Shulchan Aruch, there are those who give less. However, they are considered to be fulfilling the mitzvah of tzedakah with what is called an ayin ra, a bad eye in somewhat of a stingy way if one gives less than 1/10. So the hope is that at least people are giving 1/10. And if people are able to give 20% or 1/5, then that's even better. The question as to the source of this notion of 1/10 is a good one. Rabbi Melamed brings 3 different opinions. One from Tosfot in Masechet Ta'anit, that this is actually biblical. A second one, that this actually comes as a rabbinic law. And finally, thirdly, that it's only based on a custom or a minhag. Obviously, even if it's just a minhag, it's something very, very important. As we mentioned, it's brought in the Shulchan Aruch. It also means, by the way, that depending on how we look at this obligation to give ma'aser, that will actually mean there may be different definitions in the halachas of giving ma'aser. So, number 1, he says, let's say this is something that is a biblical requirement. He says so long as someone is not absolutely unable to do it, they would be required to give this 10% of their money in all situations. Again, we're not talking about the calculation of it, but rather depending on their personal inability to give tzedakah. If they weren't making so much money, obviously 10% would be less, but for some people, even making very little means that you have even less to give to others. He says if it would be a biblical responsibility, one would have to, unless there's absolutely no way they can make ends meet whatsoever by doing it. He says if we follow the view that it's only rabbinic in nature, he says someone who is in a tough financial situation would actually be off the hook, which they would not be if it was biblical. And he says finally, if it's only a custom, and again, we say only in that people still need to follow that view, it's still brought in the Shulchan Aruch. However, nevertheless, if it's only a custom, that would actually only fall on people who have a regular income and are able to really do it, and it would, exclude anybody who is struggling financially in any way. One other comment that Rabbi Melamed makes here in terms of Hilchot Tzedakah is in section number Chet in his Hilchot Tzedakah, in section number 8, and he asks a question about a well-known saying. He quotes the rabbis in the Talmud that in Shabbat and Ta'anit that if someone gives ma'aser, if someone gives 1/10 of their money, they will become wealthy, and that it's actually permitted to test God on this, to give ma'aser and say, hey, let's see if I become wealthy as a result. And he asks, even though he says there's a debate as to whether or not we rule this way l'halacha, can someone give out their ma'aser tzedakah and test God to pay them back, which is based on, again, as we said, the Talmud and Ta'anit, as well as a verse in Malachi, where God says, "Ubechanuni nabazot," test me on this. Even though there is a debate about that, as we said, nevertheless, Rabbi Melamed asks a more basic question, which is, what kind of business is this? Like, God has to incentivize it for us to do mitzvos, that we should do mitzvos so we're going to become rich. And he says, what exactly is going on with that? He says, first of all, the idea is that it's good for people who are giving maaser to become wealthy, because then they will continue to give maaser on that wealth, and they will actually cause, he says, a tremendous kiddush Hashem by doing that. And he says people will, not only get more money, but also people will see the success of those who do give maaser. So it's not about the individual getting a particular reward for what they're doing, even though, yes, it's true, we do get reward for mitzvot. We don't do mitzvot like giving maaser just so we become wealthy, but rather it's the outcome of that. On a societal level, he says, Rabbi Malame, that will be a wonderful thing to show not only God's hand in running the world and providing those who keep his mitzvot with wealth, but also to allow others to get money as a result.